Lewes for like 5 hours and
I
then
understand.
you stagger home and you go,
You having problems?
Yeah, I'm not able to get on. Do you want me to run down?
Wait,
If I'm not presentable.
wait a minute. Let me talk to Emery. Winnie.
Okay, so it's not Board of Public Works. Okay, let me forward her the agenda.
We'll forward it to you and then you'll be able to get it on from there. Let's get ready to do, just, when she forwards this to you, the agenda, then just go to the bottom part of the agenda and come in that way.
Sorry.
No, you don't have to be sorry. We'll figure it out.
White,
Yes,
so when it shows up as Winnie White, it's her.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
So do you want me to do, I'm on my
Tell-
email.
tell her I'm sending her the agenda
She's sending you agenda now.
and she can just.
That's the WHIT.
Mm-hmm.
All right, cool. All right, let me,
Right.
all
Okay, see what you can do. All right,
right, thank you. All right,
bye. See if she can get on. We'll wait till Winnie gets on, then we'll get started. And Mary Lou, yeah.
Good morning, everyone.
Hi, Mary Lou. We're just waiting to get Winnie on.
Okay, no problem.
Okay. You got Tim too, don't you?
Yeah, Tim's on the panel,
Okay.
one per week.
Okay. Want me to call her back?
Nick, you got a big sailing trips planned for this year? Oh, really? Last year was
Do you
Bermuda,
still
right?
have, oh, there she is. Okay, let me see if I can find Winnie.
That was a rough trip, right? Right. Yeah, that's what I hear.
6 days over and 4 back and. They don't do it again. Today.
Might change your mind later.
That's me next year. I like it.
How long does this year's trip take?
The Newport trip,
Yeah,
it's a little shorter. It's Bermuda was about 753 miles. Usually takes 5 to 6 days. Newport will be pretty.
Caroline,
gotcha.
Still having problems?
I'm working on on my phone now. I gave up on my computer. It's just freaking out at this page. I'm trying.
Did you get the agenda, Winnie? Okay, did you see the Zoom link at the bottom?
No, but you go down to the bottom of it. She's right next door, you know. She had surgery. Yeah. Oh, no, she couldn't make it, but she can't seem to get on. So she said she'll just run in. Okay, so wait a minute. So we have everybody on. It'll be good.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Are they?
Nick, do you have copies of what we have? Do you have copies of what we have?
I'm sorry.
It's online. I don't think we have extra paper copies.
You have what you,
I do that. What I have is the one that was amended.
no, that's not where we're,
September of last year.
no. We're not, that's not the one we're working with. We don't have extra copies. I'm sorry. We're working with the fiscal year 2024, 2023 stuff. You'll be able to follow. If not, just holler, we'll help you. I'm just waiting for, Winnie to come through, Mary Lou. Okay. Here she comes.
That was quick.
Well, you know, when you live next door. No, that's okay. We understand. I'm sorry you had to come.
No, I apologize.
That's okay.
Everyone, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Let's get you the paperwork. Okay. Mhm. Getting her an agenda and what have you. Okay,
I did look at what you had said.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay, well, I'm gonna kick the meeting off. It's a little bit after 10, so let's just get
When Liz
started.
comes back, do you want to introduce her since she'll be working with the committee?
Yes. Ready, Al. Your packet of stuff that you need.
Thank you so much.
Sure. It's more complicated than it is. We'll
No,
try.
I get it. Thank you.
Okay, EL, please, go ahead.
So I'd like to introduce Liz Schaefer. She joined our staff January 3rd of this year, and she is the finance manager. So she and I will be working very close together, preparing the financials and the budget and all aspects. So I just wanted to introduce her to this committee.
Pleasure's ours, Liz.
Congratulations.
Pleasure's ours. I look forward to working with you.
Likewise, I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to start off with just sort of an announcement that the fiscal year 2024 budget workshop schedule, you have that in your paperwork. And it is simply to tell you that what this is all about is the city is about to embark upon doing the budget for 2024. And so the way it's handled is that each particular department within the city meets before the mayor and city council with their sort of wish list of what they want to get done. The fiscal year actually for us starts April, goes from April 2022 to March 2023. Well, the one we're getting ready to work on is going to be April 2023 to March 2024. Are you proud of me? I did that right. And what you have in front of you is the schedule of who is going to meet with the mayor and city council and go over their budgets. The reason you have this is because it's giving you an opportunity to either come to the meetings and see what's going on or Zoom in to see what's going on. It's important if you can make any of these. And it's also important. So at the end in March, when we get together, you'll have any input you'd like to give us as it relates to the budget before we put it forth for completion. Any questions on that? Okay. So now you've had an opportunity to see the minutes. So let's start with the first minutes. Has everyone had a chance to read them? Okay, can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
The first one is the minutes from January 27th. Is that the one you mean, Jim?
Yes.
Okay, can I get a second? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? All righty, let's go on to the next one, which is November 10, 2022 minutes. Can I get a motion, please?
Motion approved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, what you have in front of you now, is Tim on? I don't see him.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Hi, Tim. Happy New
Hi.
Year.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Okay, we are going to immediately get into your area. So you want to take it from here?
I sure will. Thanks everybody for having me. Happy New Year to everybody. Hope everybody is well and healthy.
Thank you.
I just wanted to briefly kind of recap what happened in the markets in 2022, move on to the investment reports, and then give a little bit of an outlook and go on from there. I know you guys have a busy agenda. So again, thank you for your time. So jumping right into recap of 2022, it was really obviously a volatile year that was driven by the Fed, by the war in Ukraine, and the continued supply chain issues with the China lockdown of COVID. So the war in Ukraine obviously drove the price of oil way up, which caused a lot of pain at the pump. And that has since, gone down. But, early in the year, it really drove oil prices higher and really affected folks. The Federal Reserve, was grappling with high inflation. 9.1 was the highest reading in June of 2022, and how to deal with that inflation. So raising rates, they raised rates 4 times at 75 basis points, and then again 50 basis points in December. And inflation is coming down slowly, but it's been, obviously very stubborn. And so the stock market is a forward, pricing vehicle. And so it was very, very hopeful as, inflation numbers came down, that the Fed would pause or pivot and be done with their rate increase cycle. Ironically, any type of good news within the market was received as bad news, because that meant that the Fed couldn't take their foot off the gas and that they had to continue on their interest rate hiking policy. Then there was, a continued issue with supply chain disruption, with China having their zero COVID policy. China is the second largest economy in the world, and with them being shut down, really affected the global economy. And so what was, a bit ironic this year is that both stocks and bonds went down in value. Okay, it was the bonds experienced their worst drawdown in history. Okay. And so I included a little graphic with my packet that just shows the how the different portfolios did in general. Okay, and so if you had 100% of your money in bonds, you lost 17.5% in value. If you had 70% in stocks and 30% in bonds, you were off 20.5%. The traditional 60-40 portfolio, you were down 19.4. So why I'm showing you this is because it just shows that there was really nowhere to hide. People were selling their stocks, they were selling their bonds, and they were going to cash and not reinvesting. So it was a very difficult time for the market in general. Okay. And so the market is, the Federal Reserve is still concerned about inflation. It's still too high. Okay. We got a reading this morning that said it's come down to 5.7. That's good, but the Fed still wants to see its inflation, inflation going down to its 2% target, which we expect to happen, maybe by the fourth quarter of this year. The labor market is still tight. We're starting to see the layoffs within, the market, but the layoffs are coming mainly from a lot of the large tech companies that staffed up during COVID. So we're starting to see, some of the blue chip names laying off people, but we have not, the Fed has not seen a sufficient amount yet to, warrant, a pause. Some good news is that China has, of course, relaxed their zero COVID policy. And so that is, a development in the last week and a half or so. And so hopefully that will allow the, China to recover and their economy to start recovering. And, people are allowed to travel there without being quarantined. But again, that we view that as a positive. Okay. The best performing sectors for 2022 were healthcare, energy and commodities, consumer staples, dividend paying stocks, and alternative investments, managed futures is an example, and then also high grade short-term fixed income. In turning to the city's investments, okay, we made a change in November in the reserve account to switch from the ultra short mutual funds that they were invested in into a short-term treasury portfolio. And so since we have made that change, the portfolio is up 0.49%. We're expecting $38,000 in income to be generated from that portfolio. Duration is 0.54 years. Yield to worst is 4.63. as we, get more evidence about how the Fed is looking at rates, we may look to extend duration in the second half of 2023, but that is, to be decided, and we can talk about that in, July probably. The general fund, we also changed the investments there. We sold the ultra short funds, and then we invested in laddered CDs, 3 and 6 months of maturity. Average yield there is 4%. We've got 2 CDs that mature in February, and then 2 that are maturing in March. And so we'll reinvest the proceeds of those CDs in in 3-month increments, unless otherwise, directed by you guys. Okay. The 3 investment accounts, the CP, half transfer tax, general cap project, and general fund accounts, okay, are all in the same portfolio. Okay, they're a conservative, diversified portfolio. They were down 13% in 2022. All the managers, okay, in that portfolio were in line with their respective benchmarks, with the exception of 1 who we have on watch. And if they don't improve in their performance, we will remove them in the first quarter, at the end of the first quarter. The year, it was an active year in the portfolio where we continued to shorten duration and to upgrade quality in the overall portfolio. And that's always the goal of the portfolio, okay, is to minimize volatility and to always have the highest grade possible. We also, in the general cap project account, we stopped investing the dividends. And so those dividends are being swept on a monthly basis into a holding account. And we'll continue to do that until we're directed otherwise from you guys. Current balance there is $2,626.59. In terms of our outlook for 2023, it's going to be very much kind of the same themes as 2022. The Fed is going to be controlling this market. They're going to be waiting for inflation expectation, or their inflation target, to get back down towards 2%. The war in Ukraine is continuing, so that's going to add, volatility. And the market is also fearful that the Fed is going to raise rates too much and send the economy into recession. Okay, so our central scenario is that the Fed is going to be done with their interest rate hikes by the end of this, quarter, if not, early into the second quarter. So we expect about another 100 basis points worth of tightening, but of course that's all data dependent. We, expect the economy, U.S. economy, to go into recession in the second quarter and kind of come out of it in around the fourth quarter of 2023, first quarter 2024. The U.S. economy is still going to kind of slowly expand, but not much. And Europe and the UK are already in recession. We continue to see, China reopening, and so their economic growth can continue and improve. But we really don't see a heck of a lot from the market. We expect it to kind of end the year where we are today. And so we are favoring defensive sectors, just like we did last year. So high grade fixed income, dividend paying, dividend growers, consumer staples, healthcare, and energy. So with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Thanks, Tim. Anybody? Go for it.
Winnie Key, I love that we're in the defensive mode, and your time frame is another year. And with that being said, the interest rate's rising, and I know we have the 2 CDs that'll be rolling in February and March. So I like that you're going to go ahead and find the highest for the city of Lewes, interest. That's great. And I think defensive is the best. And I like that the way you broke down everything. So thank you. That's what I feel. It's just defense, defense, defense in this world right now.
Yep.
Safety. Yep.
I agree.
Mary Lou, any comments?
No, but one thing I wanted to say, Tim, you provided a really nice summary. It was a long attachment, 133 pages, but there was a great summary you did that recapped our comments and our decisions of November. And I'm wondering if you would continue to do that. And maybe you already do this and I just haven't been paying attention. But on pages 2, 3, and 4, specifically some verbiage that you did, just bullet points of the highlights of what we did and what it's accomplished. I think that's really helpful if you could do that, continue to do that quarterly. And again, maybe you have been doing that and I just haven't been paying attention, but I just want to comment that I was very grateful for that synopsis.
Yeah, I'd like to second that, Winnie. Mary Lou, that's exactly what we need, and it's easier to follow.
Yeah, my pleasure. And I've pretty much always done that, but I'll continue to do it. And I try and keep it easy and basic for you guys because you have a lot going on. And so I want to, be mindful of that.
Great, thank you.
Also with UBS giving us the discount too, that's a good help. That's a big help for the city of Lewes. I want to say we acknowledge that. All of us do. That's great. Thank you.
Of course.
Anyone else? Jim?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Nick, please, Nick.
My name is Nick Carter. And I was a stockbroker with Prudential Base from 1980 to 1990 and barely survived the crash of 87. So I guess my concern for the portfolio of the city of Lewes is the coming recession and the rising rates. And as you suggested earlier, that if you were in a diversified portfolio of stocks and bonds, you would have lost 22% last year. So the defensive approach is critical, I think, with a pending recession, rising rates, falling bonds, and a falling stock market. I agree with Winnie that your CD ladder is a great idea. If rates go up, then I would suggest that you shorten those periods, like a 3, 6, 9, and 12-month CD ladder. And that way they roll over into higher rates as the rates go up. And then I also am wondering what type of hedge, when you're exposed to stocks and bonds in the portfolio, what type of hedge, if any, do you use in the portfolio? Do you use put options? I'm assuming you don't use any futures, but I'm just wondering about options themselves. And the city is at risk. The money is at risk with what's about to happen in 2023. I think the defensive approach is important, that a lot of these stocks and bonds investments should probably be reconsidered into a very defensive style portfolio, because without a hedge, without any type of declining profitable investment, we're only bound to lose money, not make money.
That's right.
Thank you so much, Nick. Anyone else? Okay, thank you so much, Tim. We appreciate it.
My pleasure, guys. Have a great meeting and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's follow the next thing in line here, which would bring us with Ellen Lorraine. Why don't you move us forward on the financial report for 2023?
So what has been provided is the financial reports as of December. And they are, you have a summary sheet on pages 1. I'm going off of the page number that's on the document, not the page number that's on the agenda. So if you look at your financial report, which is the large sheet of paper,
Behind there, the folded one, yeah.
that,
Yeah.
Thank you.
yeah. And the
Here, you can use
Oh.
You're important.
And we'll do it together.
So
Okay,
the first 3 pages are a summary of the income statement for the city. At this point in the fiscal year, as Carolyn mentioned, we are 9 months in to fiscal year 23, so we should be at 75% of budget, both on revenues and on expenditures. If you look at the top, operating revenue for the general fund, we were at 82.5%. I don't include grant revenue since it is so flexible, changes a lot. I look at operating revenue. We are at this point holding to the same percentage as we did in the prior fiscal year. Prior fiscal year, the columns all the way to the right, we were at 83.8% at the end of December of 21. So us being at 82.5 at the end of December of 22 is good. The detail below are the expenditure totals by department. Again, we should be at 75%. I'm sorry. Some of these are higher than 75, one of them being the police department, but the contract was settled with the police department.
Yeah.
It was settled. When we prepared the budget for FY23, we didn't have a number to put into that, so we could not budget for that. So that's why it is higher than the budgeted amount by where we should be. At the bottom, again, if you take out grant expenses and you just look at operating costs, we're at 72% of budget. So again, I excluded grant expenses, both budget and on the actual year to date. I do want to mention that the transfer tax in the transfer tax fund is 1.179. So we had amended our budget to 1.1. So we've exceeded that amended budget. And what I'm seeing are a normalization of the transfer tax revenue,
that's
which
really good.
is a good thing.
Yeah.
I did look at the transfer tax revenue received in January, February of 22. And that was almost 330,000. So I'm optimistic that obviously we've exceeded the amended budget this year. Will we make what we had originally budgeted? Probably not, but we'll be in a good position.
Somewhere in that ballpark.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely.
Right.
You're addressing the operations. I know that early on, we were talking about expenses coming out on behalf of like maintenance and all that. That's probably addressed here with future mechanical things that we might have to purchase. Have we thought about maybe freezing some of the ideas of buying stuff at this point to get in security mode, defensive mode?
Right. So what we have done is when we're preparing the 24 budget, we have asked all the department managers to be very conservative in their requests. And we will be evaluating their requested budgets and looking at what is essential and what is a nice to have and making that determination. And then the budget workshops that we have with council will be yet another way that those
looking at
budgets
it
can
second
be
time.
evaluated.
Right. That's the beauty of going to them. Either you can watch them on Zoom or go to them.
I couldn't get on Zoom for whatever reason. They took my wisdom tooth out, took all my wisdom with me. Yeah. Well, thank you for that. And I think just the concern of UBS saying that we really haven't even started recession yet until the second quarter. I know that summer's coming and I know maintenance becomes even harder, we get more and more use on our stuff. So awareness and getting in front of the 8 ball is uber important for the city because we want to save all of our cash.
Yes, and
Yeah.
that's what the budget amendment did.
Yeah.
We reevaluated our capital projects
Hmm.
and kind of prioritize those. And there's no doubt that that'll occur again when we do the 24
That's
budget.
great. That's great.
Are there any questions?
No, we're good? Okay. Thank you, EO. What's your book, right?
Okay.
Okay, we're just gonna roll right along to the next thing, which is continued discussion recommendation of future revenue sources as the budget for fiscal 2024. EO, you wanna,
Yes.
everybody have this?
Yes, they do. It is attached to the agenda.
Okay,
So
good.
do you mind sharing yours with Nick in case he needs a
I
copy?
can put it on the screen too.
Oh, yeah, it'd be good if you could see it.
To help guide our discussion today, I looked at revenue streams for the city and when they were last changed to give an idea to the committee. And just as a starting point for future discussion on additional revenue. So as you can see, I can go down this list. Property taxes, 57 cents per $100 of half the assessed value was last adjusted in FY 2012. Business licenses for non-building license, they were changed in FY 2015. Building licenses, which is your general contractors, were changed in FY 2020. And rental licenses were changed in FY 23 with an effective date of 1/1/23. So that is the most recent change. The gross rental receipts tax was changed in 2009 and it went from 3% to 5%. We are in a holding pattern on adjusting that rate simply because we need data from our rental license ordinance that went into effect January 1st of this year. The parking meter rate was changed in FY 2023. For the 22 season, it went up 50 cents per hour in both the business district as well as the beaches. Our building permit fee structure changed in FY 23, where it went to 1.5% of construction cost, but there is a floor on that with the International Building Code setting the base, the bottom number for that. And then parking violations were changed in FY 2020 for the 2019 season.
Actually, there's a couple that we can look at. The 2020 and 2019 season parking violations is something we can look at.
We can, because at that time, they increased $10.
Okay.
So it's more than, what is it, $30?
Right now, yes, it is, I have. Yes, $30, $50, and $175. Handicap violation is higher, but
So that's what it will be in 2023. It'll be $30, or we're increasing it 10.
That's what we can look at.
that's what it's
Oh, we're gonna
currently
look
at.
Okay.
It was
Yeah.
adjusted to those numbers in 2020, FY 2020.
Yeah, so which means we should look at it again.
So how much is our income?
We can. Hey, I'm okay. It is what it is.
I know, I know.
Also, you happened to mention to me the non-building licenses that haven't been looked at since 2015.
Yes. So Mr. Barr mentioned we received 256,000 from parking violations.
Pretty big number.
It is.
That's a big
Sure
number
is.
for a small amount of parking.
Mhm. Yes, and business licenses for building contractors were last changed in FY 2015. And if we look at our report, we are getting those in currently, business licenses in currently. And as of right now, we've collected almost 119,000. That does include our rental license fee.
Does
It
include.
does include that. So the end of December, we've collected 19,600 in rental license fees,
That's great. That's really good.
business licenses.
So it's about 100,000. in
Yes.
business.
And yeah,
Yes, our budget for business licenses is 275,000,
Okay.
but they're due January. So we get the bulk of them in January and February. And then as businesses come into the city, we will continue to collect.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So any change to that number wouldn't be effective really until next year.
Correct.
right.
Would be in the 24 budget.
Mhm.
And rentals are slowing down. And so that numbers, we've got to really watch because they are. I'm in the real estate market the rentals are slowing. So.
Right, I think it's not as much the licensing we need to look at as the GRRT. Because the license, you
Right.
pay the $200 if you're gonna rent it all.
Right, right.
And it's, the more you rent, the more GRRT you pay. So that's where I think the volatility is.
It's
really
gonna
going
happen.
be.
Yeah.
And in doing the short-term, long-term rental, we decided the GRT, we were gonna put on hold. We got enough information this year and then revisit that, remember?
Yeah, I mean, this is such a wild ride we're on right now, the
Mhm.
world, and I just don't know what's gonna happen with the real estate market here. And when that happens, you know, what they're predicting, we could see a lot of houses rolling because people can't afford to come into town and rent anymore or such. So we do have to watch this closely.
Absolutely. That's exactly why we didn't do anything
Yeah.
with it.
I think it was smart.
Right.
I think it was very smart.
So do I.
You guys are seeing that the rental market is changing for this. I mean, because it was there for a couple of years, you couldn't find a rental, right?
It's slowing.
Long-term rentals are really hard to find. right now. Long-
Still are, right?
Moved to
Yeah.
The area for long-term, but that doesn't really cover.
The short term.
Mhm.
We're seeing,
The income, the rate is 5%, I believe.
Yes.
Mhm.
what we're seeing in our office is that we had, you know, repeat business. And we have quite a large amount of people that keep coming back yearly. Now they're like, we have to reevaluate because things have gotten so expensive. We don't think we're going to rent our week this year.
Really?
Yeah, so it's happening, but it's not as, thank God it's not as fast, but it is starting. So when the egg cracks, that's why we have to be in front of the 8 ball. And I don't know if our prices are holding that well now. I think we're seeing prices reducing
Prices tend to hold because the inventory is still. present,
so low.
Except for. the-
Inventory is low, you said?
Oh, yeah, we have no inventory in Lewes, no inventory really in Rehoboth too much. But it's gonna, I believe we're gonna start to see things start to slow. That's what I think. Yeah,
I think if we get a recession, I mean, it's, everything slows down.
yeah, that's right. That's right.
Mhm.
The other thing with the short-term rentals is, you know, for about 2 years, you had people putting all of their air travel, international travel on hold, and people are starting to resume that. And I think that we're starting to see that in the market as well.
That's a good point. It's true. Now China's open, everybody's opening, but then the airplanes are all grounded, so I don't know. No.
And that is really something. Okay, thank you.
I had a couple things to this.
Please do.
While we're on the topic.
Mhm.
So when I look at this, I don't know if there's any discussion about property taxes. I mean, the last assessed value was in 2012. So I don't know if there's any discussion about that or not, but the other thing, there's been a few meetings at city council about parking permits. And this would be another source of revenue if the parking permit plan is put into place. It would be another great source of revenue.
Mhm. These are
and-
things being looked at, you
Well,
know,
it's
yeah,
still being discussed, obviously. I
Exactly.
think there's a workshop coming up, if I'm not mistaken.
there is.
Candace, right?
Mhm.
But
That's
that would
correct,
be another
yes.
Great source.
Yeah.
And then the rental tax, the 5% rental tax. I don't know how that's monitored. I heard at one point that it was on a volunteer basis or.
Oh, it's on an honor system.
honor.
It's not volunteers.
I remember that meeting.
Yeah.
You answer
So,
that.
you know, an honorable guy like myself, I pay the tax, but you know, for some people, they probably don't, because there's no way to really find out unless you have somebody checking it.
Right, so if they are renting on the online platforms, Host Compliance, who helps us, you know, find the unlicensed rentals, also can provide their projected tax based on what they've been able to verify as bookings.
Right.
So if we cross-check that list and something comes in that they should have remitted $5,000 and they've remitted $500, we can, you know, if it's 5,500 versus, you know, if it's in the ballpark, I don't think we'll go after it, but we are able to find if there's like a large discrepancy or I didn't rent it at all.
Lost revenue there because of the honor system.
Right.
That's all. So that's.
Yeah.
another way to generate
Yes.
more revenue.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there probably is.
But we're looking into it. Right.
I just paid.
And
So
any ideas you have, please, you know, just pass them forth to us.
You know,
Nick.
Alan, excuse, I know, no one likes to talk about this, but, Nick sort of brought it up about the property taxes. I know nobody wants to raise taxes. But that tax rate, is that the same for whatever type of property it is, whether it be primary residence,
Mhm,
Yes.
second home,
mhm,
investment property, commercial property?
mhm. Keep going.
Reassessing the property.
The county.
County is.
Yeah.
The county's doing that. So, and if we want to utilize the county assessment, we do need a charter change. But given the county's now requirement to reassess on a regular basis, there's some benefit to looking at.
When you say regular basis, you mean we would be doing it, assessing every year?
5 years.
The county's going to have to do every 5 years.
Oh, every
Each
5 years?
county.
Oh, well, okay.
So when do they expect to be finished for this first go round? Do we know?
For 2024, the taxes, but then I've also heard that they are a year behind now because of the number of properties in the county.
Let's gauge it by the DMV. They can't get tags done. There you go.
Relative to the county reassessment, excuse me, I hope I'm not interrupting anybody.
Oh,
Um,
go ahead.
One thing I think could happen, so let's fast forward a bit. We see the county does a reassessment, brings everything up to a parity. And then, so the tax equalization is now 100% of fair market value as opposed to whatever it is right now. We may have to reset the property tax rate at that point anyway, so that the revenues are relatively comparable to
Right.
what they are right now. So I do think, although logic says if we haven't had a property tax change since 2012, we should move forward with the property tax change. The reality is that we're going to probably have to reset the property tax rate once the county tax reassessment is done. And I just wanted to point that out.
Yes.
We would,
yes.
but when you reset the rate post-assessment, and again, this is provided we're able to utilize the county's assessment under a charter change. The state law requires that resetting of the rate be revenue neutral.
Yep.
So I don't know that regardless of whether the tax rate is 57 cents or 87 cents, we're going to have to do that at that point in time anyway. And if you want to increase the tax, that would have to be a separate action.
Right. Okay. So what you're saying is the taxing, if there is to be a tax increase, it actually has to be either before the county assessment takes place with the tax equalization, or it has to be after. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes.
Yes.
It can't be in one fell swoop.
Exactly.
Okay, got it. All right. Thank you for that clarification.
Is there a comparison of what our property tax rate is with, the other nearby?
So it's really apples and oranges. It's very hard to compare because we have our assessment that was done in 2000. Rehoboth has their own municipal assessment. I don't know what their year is. Do you?
A lot sooner.
Okay, it's more recent. Georgetown, I know, uses the county assessment. So we're not all operating off of the same base, the assessed value is.
So the assessed value by a third party is a bigger event to look at the rate itself?
Well, it would be. I expect that you're going to see more municipalities go to the county rate, or I'm sorry, the county assessment. since they will be reassessing more regularly. And if that's the case, then we would be, and I think that would make it easier to compare our rates with others. But because everybody's going off of a different assessment year and we don't even know, when you're doing assessment for tax purposes, there are various methodologies. So we don't know what methodologies were used in Rehoboth versus here. In terms of the assessment. So I think it'd be very difficult to prepare or to compare with others because we're not we're just looking at different
Apples and oranges.
different assessment values, different assessment years, and possibly different methodologies.
But did I understand correctly or hear right that an assessment is done and we want to raise our rates based on the rate change?
That initial to equalize it when you adopt the assessment, yes, it has to, you cannot, you can't backdoor a tax increase through a reassessment. So it has to be, and again, that's revenue neutral on the whole. That doesn't mean that somebody's taxes go up, somebody's going to pay more and somebody's going to pay less because it's equalization. But it would have to be two separate actions. One to roll back to the rate to make it revenue neutral, and then another separate action.
Does the assessment based on where your house is in downtown Lewis or outside of Lewis? How's that? That's just a
I
question.
mean,
I don't
that's a
know.
question for
That's
the
a good
assessors.
question.
I mean, certainly location makes a difference, and
Yeah.
they're going to they'll look at comps. So
Look at
they
comps.
do measurements, so they
Okay.
look at square footage and everything, but they're going to look at comps. So
Yeah, I noticed like when I was in the administration in Henlopen Acres, they did it by chimneys. You believe that? Fireplace.
oh, wow.
Yeah, they did assessments by how
Wow.
many fireplaces you have.
Well, it's not.
Isn't that crazy?
I would definitely not.
I'm in trouble.
fireplace.
That damn old house.
Mhm.
It
Okay.
sounds like the rate. The property taxes is not going to be a revenue increase source.
It could
matter
be.
what
Could
we
be.
do.
It could be. I mean, you could
Depends.
raise the rate anytime.
With
Yeah.
a charter change
Sure.
Yeah, but you,
as well as,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
the other,
start with the charter change.
right, the other thing,
Okay.
Candace mentioned the charter change, our charter limits the amount of property tax we can collect.
So it's capped.
So if we, right, so if we
Right.
do a rate increase, we need to make sure that we don't
Overdo it.
And that
Yeah.
requires us going through the state legislature, so you have to work on their schedule.
and
To get
2/3
that-
vote.
Yeah.
So is that sounds like it could be a more timely. Shot at increasing revenues.
Yeah, we actually have started working with our solicitor's office to work on a number of charter amendments to address the cap and then some, I can't remember, a number of other things.
I think we can look at what kind of increase in the tax rate could get us just below our
Right.
current 3.5 to give an idea to the committee, what kind of additional revenue
Revenue.
are we talking?
I'm
What kind of percentage?
I'm learning how you all are doing it. So knowing that we have all these developments coming into play in Lewis, annexation, does that make a big difference? So that
Mhm.
would keep our taxes lower if we annexed more property, right? Into the city of Lewis.
Mhm.
So did we do New Road? Are we all, I mean, I'm using New Road as an example.
Well, we only have a small. area.
That's all annexed already or is not?
No.
annexed?
There's a lot of new road that's not.
Not, but there is a portion, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Just a small area.
Hmm.
Just, I can't remember that.
Do we have
development.
people asking for annexation right now? Contractors, no one?
Mm,
Well, unfortunately, people are requesting not to annex. They're
Requesting
requesting
the
to be able
services,
to get.
but not,
Yeah, not to get
services
annexed.
Without annexation.
right.
How
That's,
do you feel about that? just as a quick question for the city of Lewis, is it's not a good thing, right?
Well, it's not a part of our comprehensive plan. Our comprehensive plan is
Yeah.
annexation.
I would love to make more money if they're taking our utilities and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and-
I mean, from a money
And
standing.
again,
No,
you mentioned New Road, I mean, that's an area where if we do speed enforcement and everybody around you is in, and we're doing speed enforcement in a certain area, you're benefiting from that even if you're not,
Okay,
you know, so
Yeah.
they are kind of getting some benefits
Okay.
from the taxes, but they're not paying toward it. So yes, I think that
Okay.
there's
There's
advantage, but
it's
a
not,
voluntary process.
okay, thank you. You're just helping me get it. Thanks.
well, annexation is
Yeah,
it's a good subject matter. Okay, we finish on this? All right, I'm going to take you down to C5, which is now C3, actually. Continued decision and recommendations of sources. We just did that. So we're going to move down to the Lewis line funding. The reason I have this on here, because our last conversation, we were getting into good subject matter as it related to, did I miss something, guys? No?
Are there other funding sources?
Well, I wrote down a couple of things that Nick mentioned, but if anybody else has any ideas, now is definitely the time. That,
What about potential funding sources for open space? I think that that's been a request.
Okay.
And seeing our current budget and our current sources of revenue, are there ideas?
I would love some ideas on that.
That and the resiliency fund that's been recommended.
we did talk about, if somebody were to have some land to possibly give them a tax abatement, in order for them to like donate, but tax abate, whatever we
Right.
were saying
Mhm.
earlier. Has that been addressed? If we have anyone that's ready to donate land? Do we have anyone that's in there that is willing to sell land first to Lewis? Do you have any?
I think there are some potential sellers. There, as far as I'm aware, there are no potential donors.
Owners?
No,
Okay.
that word doesn't.
With us giving incentives, that's what I think we should talk about, incentives at some time. If we do have someone that's interested in selling their property, we should be creative and come up with some type of plan for Lewis, if that's the tract of property we want. Maybe we come up with an incentive program, which I don't know.
I know we had talked last time about possibly putting together a group of folks who can talk about open
Right,
space as it
correct.
relates to how we can handle that. So maybe we may just put that back on the plate in terms of
Trying to.
pulling the committee
Yeah.
together. We talked about that before, Anne Marie, like
Of
possibly.
it on the January 26th workshop. draft
Okay,
agenda.
good. Yeah,
Okay,
the idea of putting together an ad hoc committee to explore open spaces. I remember having the conversation with Khalil about this, who is very involved. So let's keep that open. You're absolutely right. And thanks for reminding me of that, EL. I appreciate that because that is a big subject for us. Anything else out here that anybody has any ideas on?
Resiliency fund would be the other.
Yeah, do you want to educate on resiliency? We didn't bring that up before, did we?
I apologize. I missed it.
Resiliency fund, do you remember, Jim?
Oh,
Did
I
we
don't
bring that up?
remember that.
Did we discuss that last time?
No, we really stayed in the open space concept, but
we-
we didn't
we
talk about the resiliency
but-
aspect. Because you
Right,
guys were still in the process of
right.
working out, defining that
Right,
whole
so-
thing.
So the Executive Committee on Resiliency, which Candace was a part of, recommended creation of a resiliency fund. So I've put on the draft, again, still draft agenda for the council workshop on January 26th. Discussion regarding creation of an ad hoc committee to develop recommendations regarding creation of a resiliency fund and an open space fund. And we talked about this some at the mitigation planning team the other day. And there could be benefit to having both the mitigation planning team represented as well as the finance committee, because it really is kind of a cross, it cuts across both areas.
When we were talking with UBS, he was saying they do a sweep monthly
Mhm.
of, the interest, and they're putting it into an interest bearing account, I'm sure. But that being said, would your resilient fund, maybe we could roll in into that interest bearing account if there's money to be put into a big pot with UBS?
I think
And have
that's
him not roll that into anything.
That's-
Start it.
possible. It's getting the funds started. You know,
Okay.
where's
Where
the
do-
money going to come from?
Yeah.
And then to enable it to grow, yes, putting it in an investment vehicle.
Yeah,
to
but
grow
we need the
outside of-
initial.
We need the initial.
Right.
We need the initial.
Okay.
I was going to say, so the discussion from the Executive Committee on Resiliency went something like this. The bogey that was thrown out, if you will, was in theory, $500,000 a year would be a nice sum of money to put aside in appropriate places, of course, investment, all that. But it wasn't intended, at least in that part of the conversation, as a fund that would repair things after what will come as a disaster, a natural
No.
disaster. But rather to amass enough monies that you might be able to take advantage of other grants and other ways that you might be able to mitigate disasters in some fashion within the city limits. You know, we're not talking about dikes like Holland, because clearly there are limits on what you can do with nature, but the sea level rise and climate change elements were discussed in a lot of detail. And were there some areas in specific parts of the city that could benefit from some capital investment that would provide safer egress in some examples or other things like that, then that's in theory what those funds would be used to address. Just to give you, because sometimes when the conversation about resiliency is discussed, it's after the fact of a natural disaster and how do you recover. Some cities have used funds for that purpose, but then there are other paradigms where you've got cities trying to look at how do you mitigate what might happen in a natural disaster. So two kind of schools of thought on where your money is invested.
But no idea where that original amount.
No idea. It was the idea that the executive committee endorsed two recommendations. One, that information be provided to prospective buyers in advance of purchase about where this property resides and what risks you're taking in acquiring it. That was the one, that's a summary of it. And then two was the concept of a resiliency fund ought to be established. So those were the two that made it to the point where they were accepted by the committee. There were others that council will have conversation about that have merit to have further discussions and consideration. But of the committee's recommendations, there were only two that rose to the level of committee.
But they brought those two up. I remember the resiliency, but I never could understand what they really define that resiliency money as being.
So it'd be for things that might pass the test of doing some good in advance of a disaster.
In advance of, that's the point.
Right.
You know, reduce flooding in an area that could be
Okay.
prone to flooding. So, and because these are big ticket items,
Yes.
Right.
you know, the recommendation was that we fund this resiliency fund at 500,000 a year
Not touch it.
and not touch it until it gets to at least five.
Until it was real money, because
Right.
otherwise, you know, there really are very few things that one can do with those, I mean, relatively small amounts of money. I mean, it seems like a lot of money to the public,
No.
perhaps
Mm.
500,000 seems like a lot of money, but in the greater scheme of things of road elevations or other mitigating
Right.
systems that might be
Floodgates.
installed, that's a drop in the bucket as
Right.
to what those kinds of things cost. So to her point, it was the target of 5 million to amass, so that then in some cases grants have a matching provision and things like that, whether they be federal or state grants in that paradigm. So that was
So the question
the
becomes,
discussion.
where do you get a new funding source to generate a 500,000 a
Right.
year without diverting from something else? Because people have said, oh, use transfer tax. Well, then you're taking away
No.
from capital projects.
Right.
And you've got
Knowing-
streets that need
knowing that
repaired and
where
delayed.
We are with all that, that's the great information. And then the information that Lewes is looking for maybe funding. I know that the federal government has come out with bigger grants for municipalities. Have we done all of our applying and stuff? Because I know there's a boatload of cash that Biden is allowing now for infrastructure.
We've
or
done
for-
some. We have a grant that was submitted to FEMA. We did a study of West Cedar Street flooding, and they identified the cause and some remedies. So the grant was submitted to FEMA to go to the next stage. They were hoping to go to implementation. The verbal feedback that we've gotten so far is that FEMA is going to approve the funding for design,
Okay.
but not yet for construction. But once we have the design done, we can go back for funding for construction.
That's a starting point.
Right.
And I was speaking with someone and they said that there are people out there that can help our town, or municipalities that actually know the ins and outs of the
Right.
federal grants.
So the University
have
of
someone?
Delaware has,
do?
they've created what's called a grant assistance program.
Okay,
And that program is there to help municipalities
the
secure
University of
grants.
Delaware's who we're
Mhm.
using. Okay.
So, we have talked to them about some things. In some cases, though, we really need to move forward on a design,
I agree.
and
We
have
should
something
grab it as
ready
soon as
to
we
go.
can.
Mhm.
Right.
Because everybody's grabbing it at the same
Right.
time. We need our piece of the pie.
Yep.
Mhm.
So
Shovel-ready idea.
we
We're not there yet in
looking
some
at-
cases.
a variety of potential grants,
That's good.
both with the university's assistance, but also, in-house staff.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you for all that. I didn't know all that.
Sure, absolutely. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Can I ask-
Oh, sure, Nick.
can I ask a
Hmm?
question? And a statement also. When I looked through the budget, I saw that the ARPA,
The ARPA money.
either ARPA, almost doubled in value to $1,765,065. Is that already accounted for? That's for.
Most of it,
Yes.
most of it, yes.
Yes,
I'm just thinking about where to find this money to put into the resiliency.
yes.
We wouldn't be able to use that
Use
for the
that.
resiliency
It's-
fund
it's
anyway.
strict.
It has-
Right.
Doesn't qualify under
restricted.
ARPA.
That was a question. And my comment about the resiliency, I'm a Lewes Beach property owner, and when the next storm comes and we start to lose more dune and more beach, we do not have, that I know of, an emergency mitigation plan. We don't really have an active resiliency plan. And when you go to the beach now at high tide, there's very little sand on the beach. A lot of that sand is out in the bay on the sandbars, but the city, every winter they put up a snow fence on the public beach. But the public beach goes all the way down to Roosevelt Inlet. So I'm curious, this would be part of the resiliency plan on how to, help restore the dune before the next storm comes. So that snow fence should probably run all the way down to Roosevelt Inlet. It's all public beach. And this would be a project for the resiliency fund. And the mitigation process, there's a whole nother story. I've done a lot of studies on mitigation and how to protect a shoreline, up and down the East Coast, and living in California for many years, and between riprap and breakwaters and every other thing you can think of, bulkheads. But in both of those plans, resiliency and mitigation, there almost has to be a sort of a project, a funded project. And then that money could be then earmarked for that project. So that's just a comment.
Thanks, Nick.
Are we part of the beach replenishment that they talk?
We're not due for replenishment this year, and the replenishment that we do get in Lewes under the federal program really only goes from the inlet to Iowa Avenue.
Oh, okay.
So some of those areas that have really narrowed aren't part of that program.
Broadkill, I thought was on.
Broadkill is,
Broadkill's on
and
that.
Slaughter Beach is.
We're not where.
It's just because we don't have a federal project set up for it. I have talked to the Corps about that, and they would have to do, in order to get more of our beach as part of the program, we would either they would, or we would have to do like a whole study and
And then you'd have
So-
to submit it and then let
Yes.
the Corps of Engineers come in and evaluate.
exactly.
Mm.
So, I think we do want to find out more about how to do that. The other thing is, next week, Senator Carper will be hosting a press event in Bowers Beach, because the Water Resource Development Act, which is the funding bill that funds beach replenishment as well as some other things, is changing right now. If a beach is eligible for replenishment, it's 65% federal funds and 35% local match. The state has been paying the local match, but has indicated that they are not going to continue to pay the full local match in perpetuity.
Mm.
So that's an ongoing discussion that's happening. between
Wow,
That's not
the-
right.
The municipalities and the county and the.
wow.
and
And they're only
state.
given
But,
35.
this Water Resource Development Act that was just passed changes that match from the federal government takes 90% of the cost
Oh.
and local
Oh.
share is 10%.
Oh,
So
okay.
local share is less. But I did talk to the Corps about the whole idea of expanding the area.
Do we
but
have
we didn't
anyone
get
to
into
talk to?
detail.
And I know I hate bringing Rehoboth into it. I just do. But I know that Rehoboth always has their ducks in a row for that
Right,
replenishment
so it's really the state that
that pushes
manages
which.
it.
We're
but-
number one right
but-
now. The city of Lewis is beating
but-
Rehoboth.
So we do have Tony Pratt, we do have a contract with him, and he used to run
Yeah.
the shoreline management program. Well, he used to actually be on council here.
Yeah,
But he used to run the shoreline management program for Denrec, and he's now a consultant. So, I think
we should reach out. to him.
we could certainly for a cost have him kind of
I mean, I think we need to be
figure out how we do
nudged,
that.
because it's just seems like Bowers, it seems like Slaughters, and then it goes Broadkill, and then, there's Lewis, and then
Well,
Rehoboth.
and we will
then
get it.
Bethany,
It's just
then
this is.
Nah, what happened to us?
We will get it. It's just not our year, but we only get it for a very small area of beach. And then
That's not right. That's not fair.
the other area that gets replenishment and provides local match of their own is Cape Shores. But that's got,
But that's private, right?
it's,
Right.
no,
It's
it's
public
public
beach.
beach.
Yeah. It's public.
Huh.
They
Yeah.
fund the match for the replenishment. Now,
That's
that
public.
there are some interesting dynamics there because the breakwaters that are for the ferry
Yeah.
are preventing
Causing some issues.
any sand from washing up on the beach. But right after replenishment, storms will take it away.
They
So
had,
they've got real
they had a
challenges.
homeowners association meeting where they had some scientists provide them with a really thorough understanding of some of the science, which was a fascinating meeting to attend. But they talked about, where replenishment can come from when they harvest sand. And if you do it in the wrong method, you do coving, and then the wave action actually strips away more sand. It was a fascinating science, and I don't pretend to be able to explain it in any level of detail. It was just that, there aren't any simple answers when it comes to that. One of the questions that they posed, which I think was material to this conversation, was why do we have to have big trucks come and haul sand? And one of the parts of the conversation was they explained how much it costs to stage the at-sea replenishment equipment. So setup of that equipment, tear down of that equipment, and then the number of days in between that the equipment actually provides that vacuuming and replenishment cycle to a given area. They laid out the costs associated with that. So it was abundantly clear that since they are paying for a part of this, that it was in their interest to have the trucks come through their community and put the sand on the beaches. It became abundantly clear that while they didn't like the big trucks trundling through, that the other option was clearly a much more expensive one and not feasible.
Did they do the replenishment for the state park though? I mean, do we know that they do the state park, the state of Delaware?
I'm
Cape
not
Henlopen?
sure if Cape Henlopen State Park gets replenishment.
Yeah, I wonder.
Delaware Seashore State Park does. But I don't think Cape does.
I mean, are we a
it-
national park now? Isn't Cape Henlopen State?
No,
I
it's
thought
still
it became a national park at one point.
No,
No,
it's not.
we only have
But-
one.
Still.
Yeah, they talked about.
But I mean, one of the things that, in talking to Tony Pratt about this is along the ocean beaches, there's natural replenishment that happens.
Yeah.
And in the bay, the dynamics are different, but in particular in Lewes, it's different because of all of the breakwaters and the, how
And-
we've changed it.
And the natural curvature of that
Right.
point
Point.
also impacted. They discussed a bit of that evening and I don't think it was recorded. So unfortunately, it's not something you can go to and listen to again. I was on Zoom when I listened to it, but it was a fascinating discussion. And so there are folks out there who could explain this in much greater detail. But for each of the areas, one of the things that they did speak to briefly for the Indian River Inlet versus Lewes Beach versus Cape Shores versus the Point, that all of those areas are appreciably different in the flow of the water and the sand removal and the sand replenishment. And so it's not something where you can say, well, it worked here, it should work there. They gave you enough information to realize that it's always more complicated than that, and that it wasn't a simple
I guess.
do it
knowing
here,
the
then do it
knowledge-
there.
I'm gonna get
knowledge
us
that you
back to
just gave
this.
us, though. But I mean, can we make sure we get Tony and try to get a price of what it would cost for?
Yeah, we
I
can-
mean, we can't pay it until we get approvals, but I
Right,
mean, maybe
right.
just get an idea of what it'll
I
cost.
can reach out to Tony and.
Yeah.
May I say, and before we move on, may I
Yeah.
say something? Okay, so I live in Cape Shores and there's a beach replenishment committee that's been put together at Cape Shores, and it's headed by one of the Cape Shores board members named Bob Wetzel. And Bob called a forum probably about maybe 6 weeks ago. The mayor was there and Khalil was there.
And that was on the Zoom call with.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what Candace
Yeah,
was.
okay, so, but there are two things that I think are relevant as it applies to the city of Lewes. And one is that I think we're all on the same page, relative to the Cape Shores Beach is a public beach. And so there has been disparity, not just over by Lewes Beach, but also with the Cape Shores Beach being included in the Army Corps of Engineering in their map. And so I think we need to have a united front in terms of approaching the Army Corps of Engineers, if that's the logical step, and that's something that only Bob Wetzel really could communicate upon. But we also, the second part of this is we also already have, as part of our arrangement with Tony Pratt, we already are in contract with him from a consulting standpoint. So, I just want to make sure that we're not siloed in our approaches and that there's good communication between the city of Lewes and Cape Shores, because we could be doing the same thing and paying for it twice over. So that's all I wanted to say.
Okay. Alrighty. Thank you, Mary Lou.
Mhm.
Sure.
It's actually, I don't know if it's a recommendation from the committee.
Let me speak to the microphone.
I don't know if it's a recommendation from the committee to add a line item to the budget about this resiliency fund. I mean, is that something that came from the meeting that you went to?
So we aren't prepared quite yet to add a line item when we don't have a source of funding. It would be,
Yeah,
kind of a,
we got to start with getting money first.
it's zero, but
Yeah.
at some point in the future, then
Mhm.
the idea might be that there would be a placeholder for that where resources could be applied.
We had a question in the Q&A. Frankie Bradshaw asked if University of Delaware assists with federal grants or just state. They'll assist with any sort of grant. I mean,
good.
right now I've got them looking at to see if there's grant funding they can find, like private foundation grant to help us with our Fisher Martin House issue.
Yes,
nice,
that'd be good.
Call.
So,
That's good.
yeah, so that they will assist with any type of grant.
Good. Okay, everyone, good on this? Great. All right, let's get back to C4. Last meeting we had, we talked about Lewes Line talking to DOT and how they could help us. And we said that we would have a meeting with them. We did. Anne Marie, Ellen Rain, myself met with them, and it was a very good meeting. I mean, they talked about how they could help us. We were talking about looking at routes and things of that nature. And one of the issues are the requests that are being sent to us from various areas within the city as it relates to, can Lewes Line go here and can Lewes Line go there? So we are going to embark upon looking at that and any other suggestions. So what I'm asking right now from you guys is, do you have any ideas as it relates to Lewes Line and taking it to the next step? So, and I remember last time you said something to me, Winnie, that had to do with, well, approaching the homeowners association, for example. So do you remember that?
I do. I think that the Lewes Line is such an asset. And I know that people, it was catching fire last summer. So I think, we should, while the irons are hot, and try to keep this thing motoring through Lewes. It'll just keep growing. It'll keep growing. We just I want you to figure out. I thought maybe extending the line would be an answer for some of the older residents in Lewes, so they could get to Weiss Market. We'll use it as an example. Have a bus stop down there. I do also know with the extension of the Lewes Line, maybe BB Hospital. But I know that we have to get permission from the state. I think that's what you told me, because we don't want to be in competition with the DART bus.
Oh, they're not
Oh, no.
worried about us
They're not
being in
worried about us.
competition with
Right.
the bus. It's our issue with the state is if we're stopping on state maintained roads, we need state approval, but DART has offered to help us with
They've
that.
been extremely helpful
Nice.
in regards to helping us even map out a route.
So they will sit down with us.
If they have sat down with us and
Oh, I
will
think
help
that's
us in any
awesome.
way.
Yes, we
They
need to
don't look
follow
at
up.
us as being an issue. They look at us as exactly what they'd like the city to do.
My
So-
suggestion is definitely get an extension on the map. That's my suggestion.
Mhm.
I had a thought of offering tours and having a tour circuit of points of interest, highlights, generate revenue, that kind of an additional service or option, which would take into account not only the residents, but also the tourists who come here and don't really know a lot of the things that we have here for either viewing, or I don't know whether it's like the buses in New York City with the
Double deckers.
double-decker thing, but it's that thought of, okay, you've got the buses. Now, if you had a tour package to offer for more than $1, that might be helpful, and it might be attractive and better used even in inclement weather, if you will.
That's a great idea, too.
So I think we got the numbers last meeting that the vast majority of the riderships from the ferry. And obviously, I think that they have discontinued their service. So we had talked about maybe approaching them. And because, the bottom line is, it's a great idea. I think it's a wonderful idea, as does everybody, but is it ever going to be able to pay for itself? So I think from the ferry, is it possible to look for some financial support from them?
Try.
Yeah, I think that we have that on the list of possible discussions that we should have with them. Yes.
Does the ferry have a trolley? It does have a.
It just
Not
doesn't have a
anymore.
No, it doesn't. why didn't we buy that trolley? Like, I want to spend our money. That Lewes Ferry trolley was so cute.
Well,
Um,
it is something that we've looked at, Jim,
something
and we intend to go back to them and see if they can contribute a little something here.
Now, I noticed there are other towns up north that they market the town with their transportation because parking's so tight like what we have. We don't market it really to the point where I guess it would be Lewes Chamber of Commerce, right? But we should have a website, you know, with the Lewes line as a header and saying you come into Lewes, park publicly on Lewes property, and we have a Lewes line that can promote Lewes downtown businesses. We don't really market it. I know we have banners on the buses and such,
Right,
but I wish that Lewes Chamber of Commerce would push it out there and get it marketed.
Well, remember, it was a pilot, so we got into it very fast.
Yeah.
It was a pilot. Our way of marketing at that point was trying to get
yeah.
all of the folks on Second Street and everyone to buy into it. So,
we did have it in
and
Ferry
we
Vision.
did, I beg your pardon?
It was on Ferry Vision.
Oh,
Which
okay.
might explain.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
So yes.
That's good.
We
That's
understand what you're
really
saying.
good. So
So
maybe we
we're
should have it at the
stepping it
movie
up.
theaters too, at Midway.
we
Lewes line.
we step it up.
Yeah, step up
Step
marketing
up
on it.
marketing, absolutely.
Have we gotten any commitment from our grant partners from last year to continue going forward?
We haven't gone that far.
Last year, we got bond bill money that Senator Lopez got in the bond bill for us. So, as you know, Senator Lopez has left. We have not picked up that discussion with Senator Huxtable.
That doesn't mean we won't.
Right.
We will pick up that discussion. So just keep throwing things out that can help us to, you know, we're never gonna break even on it, but we would like to, as much as we can, get as much as we can to get it where it needs to, at least people are interested.
Can be put on the bus.
It is.
Well, we have advertising on the inside. You're talking about the outside.
Oh, you mean the outside the bus? Oh, yeah, sure.
So other cities do, they've got.
Yeah, what we wanted to
Actually,
do, we wanted to be careful of that when we first rolled this out as a pilot, because we wanted to make sure that people understood it was Lewes line. We didn't want it to come across as an auto place or something else. So it's very important that we keep our image of Lewes line on the bus. That's why we decided very early that we would not do that on the outside the bus, but the inside of the bus would have all.
So
the
early
other-
brand
Yeah,
the
we
bus
need to
first.
Be really careful,
Yeah.
make the bus what
Okay.
it is,
Yeah.
the Lewes line.
Karen, just a suggestion, going from other towns. I know we have the buses leased for a certain amount of time,
Mhm.
but if we do find that this would be an asset for Lewes, would it behoove us to maybe get something a little catchy like a trolley that would make it catch fire even faster? Because everybody wants to ride a trolley. And from the Lewes Ferry, you would see this beautiful thing coming down that Lewes owns or is promoting for rides. I think people looking at the Lewes line, it's a little bland. That's just my opinion.
Mhm.
It looks like I'm gonna get on a say the word geriatric bus.
Well, it is. It is.
It sort of makes me feel like
And they are
Um,
old and the windows don't open well.
yeah. It sort of makes me feel like I'm really getting disabled when I'm getting on this bus. So I'm thinking maybe something to beautify it a little bit, or think about a trolley. Trade in all the buses and see if that person or whoever we're leasing from has a trolley that
You
we.
gotta
can-
remember, these buses are $1.
I know.
Okay, so
Use it.
anytime you want to give me something, I'm
Well,
good.
use it.
I'm good, Winnie. I love your ideas.
I
So,
just
you
want it
know,
to be
just
what
saying.
Lewes is classy, historical. I can give you an example of a town. It's called Jim Thorpe in Pennsylvania. They have 3 trolleys running in that town, and I will tell you, everybody's on them because they have limited parking. And it is something, I want to get on that damn trolley. I don't want to, worry about trying to find parking. I go to their municipality parking and I jump on one of their trolleys.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, but
I
you're
don't
also
give a
talking about,
bus.
no, you're also, no, but you're also talking about incurring cost. And right
I
now,
know.
that's an issue
I
for us.
I know.
So as beautiful as it seems, and I think it sounds great,
I know.
okay,
no,
don't
I know.
misunderstand me,
I'm
but the
just-
reality is we're
I'm-
paying $1 for a bus.
I'm having fun.
Okay, all righty. Anyone else? Okay, well, moving right along, let's talk about, well, when I wrote down the goals of the committee, it's very important that this committee remember that they are an advisory group to the mayor and city council. And when I set up an agenda, I'm setting up an agenda for you to be involved with. You're not ever going to get an agenda with me telling you this is happening or that's happening. If you want to see that, go to the city webpage. Our agenda is always going to be hands-on, how we can do what we need to do. Okay, so I wanted to make that point. Now, in terms of our next meeting, the budget session will start right away and it will end in March. We want to make sure that you try to attend or at least go on Zoom at some of these budget meetings so that when this is finished at the end, and I don't mean completely finished, that your eyes are put back on the budget so that you have some idea of what's going to happen. And you can help us in any way with any kind of ideas you have before the budget becomes final. Okay, so did I miss anything, EL?
Now, I think each week when we have our budget meetings, a new draft version of the budget is available, as well as a summary of the changes that were made and included in that version that we will be looking at that day from the previous version. So you will know and be able to track what changes have been made as we go through this process for the FY24.
Thank you so much. Now, what we should probably do is put a tentative date down for March. Where's my book? So. Did you have a date in mind, EL?
I was looking at the schedule. Right now, there is a date of March 13th, which is our monthly council meeting to adopt the budget. We can look at something prior to that date. I know the 10th is a budget markup for the council.
Right.
So it could be March 9th, March 8th.
Yeah, we could have it just before. You could either do 9. I won't do 8. I will do 7. So how does any of those, wait a minute. Sorry, guys, I'm in the wrong month. Should be March. Okay. How about March 7th? How's everybody?
Is that a Tuesday?
Yes, it
Is-
is, sir. So good for you? All right, let's do a March 7, 10 a.m. And in that way, we'll have what we need from the budget. Okay. You want to say something, Nick?
Yeah.
Sure.
Just a little background. I have a finance background and over the past, I don't know, 20 years, I've had 3 different occasions to do some budgeting work. One was with my homeowners association at Wolf Run. Another one was at the city of Slaughter Beach, where I was the finance director for 3 years. And then the Lewes Yacht Club, where I was the finance director for 7 years. And I just want to make the statement of, my experience and what I'm looking at. I had a chance to go through the budget, the 28-page budget. I'm assuming it's QuickBooks. Is that correct? Or is it something different?
And that's maintained in Excel.
Okay, so in the budgeting processes that I've worked and been in charge of, we had 3 parts. One was the operating expense, which was revenue and expenses. The second one was a capital reserve fund. And the capital reserve fund would be money that is set aside for capital improvements down the road. And the third part of it was what I called and what we used as a sinking fund. And the sinking fund involves the appraisal of assets, their life expectancy, their value, and their expected replacement or repair costs. It's like 5, 10, 15,
I
20 years
understand,
down
I
the road.
understand.
It's called a sinking fund.
Mhm.
So when I went through this, I was a little confused about the transfer tax fund. It looked like some of the capital improvements, and I found on page 26, the budget for capital improvements was almost $2 million for this year. And it's coming out of the transfer tax fund. And the problem that we had in Slaughter Beach was that all of the money went into one basket. And then it was being used to pay the operating account, and it was used to pay whatever else came up. So when you take the transfer tax out of the equation, the operating account has to operate on taxes and budgetable fixed items, or, items that are going to be recurring items, not transfer tax. Transfer tax is an adjustable number. Most likely it may go down this year again. So it's hard to budget a capital improvement on money that you don't have. That's the purpose of the capital reserve fund, is to put the money in the fund with the projects. The sinking fund goes out 5, 10, 15 years, 20 years. So when you have to replace a building, or you have to fix, some piece of equipment or buy new equipment, you already have it planned 5, 10, 15 years from now. But you have to do it now. You can't wait till it happens and then wonder where you're going to get the money from. You can't just expect it to come from transfer tax. So these are just some observations and I would say some suggestions, because I was confused about the transfer tax fund and how that was operating. And the reason I'm here is because of the meeting last year when we had a deficit in transfer tax, and we had to cancel capital improvements, and we had to dip into the reserves. And so that's when I spoke to both of you.
To both of
about it.
us at that meeting.
That's why I'm here today, just to review it. So those are just my comments, and I'll call them suggestions.
We truly appreciate it, Nick.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody? Okay, well, as far as I'm concerned, we have done what we needed to do today. So thank you so much for your time. Meeting is closed.
Meeting.
Yeah, we got good stuff. And
Thank you, Carol.
stay in touch.